Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TMA Top Talk. This event is organized by TMA under Corporate Performance Group, CPMG, to invite world-class speakers to share their vision and experience with top management in Thailand. In 21st century, things change rapidly and unexpectedly. We need to arm ourselves not with weapons, but with ideas and creativities. I'm excited that we will have the world creative leader and visionary as our speaker today, Mr. Pablo Rodriguez.
Prior to be ex-ambassador, Mr. Pablo is a founding CEO of Alpha, a European equivalent unit of X, which is created by Telefonia, the largest telecompany in Europe. It is a skunk-work moonshot facility to address some of the world's biggest problems by delivering a radical solution using breakthrough technology. Such moonshots include effort in the area of mental health, which is just launched today, future of learning, AI technology, and distribute energy. Alpha's moonshot affect hundreds of millions of people, create a positive societal impact, and have potential to grow into billion-euro business. These projects are underpinned by an AI team, driving trustworthy, ethical AI, and privacy-preserving machine learning. With 15 years of experience, Mr. Pablo has worked in several Silicon Valley's startups and made change in various aspects to the world, from network, security patching, coding, and to a lot of even video network delivery to every home. Like more than 40 million subscribers has been using that. For soccer fan, you may want to know that Mr. Pablo also worked with FC Barcelona, applying big data science to soccer. He has more than 150 scientific publications and 30 patents. He received numerous international awards, including Prix de la Roche for innovation excellence. Mr. Pablo is an IEEE Fellow and an ACM Fellow for outstanding contributions in computer science. He has been an advisor to Vatican, Akamai, and Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, and co-founding the Data Transparency Lab. Academic-wise, he has been a professor at Columbia University, New York during 2010-2012. He received his PhD in computer science from Swiss Federation Institute of Technology and Master Science in Computational Physics from King's College London. His latest book, Artificial Intelligence: How the World and Your Life Will Change, explore how advances in AI can and will combat Earth's biggest challenges, including access to resources, natural catastrophe, and climate change. He's passionate about organizations coming together to solve humanity's biggest problems through technology. He demonstrates the value of moonshot thinking to unveil what he believes will ultimately lead to the world where ideas are a value currency. Let Mr. Pablo share with us his vision and rich experience, the artificial intelligence, the transformer. Please join me to welcome the world creative leader and visionary, Mr. Pablo Rodriguez.
Thank you so much. Thank you for a very warm welcome, and hello to everybody. It's such a joy, pleasure, and honor to be here with you and share some of this innovation journey in times of disruption, in terms of chaos, where everything is upside down, and but at the same time, there are so many opportunities ahead of us to rethink the future and to leave behind things that don't serve us anymore, and create the new opportunities for where with big social opportunities and technology that will create new impactful businesses and growth, especially during this time of digital transformation, where we've seen probably an acceleration of more than 5 years into the digital acceleration. Things that were not happening before are happening at a much faster pace because of the need to work remotely, to serve, to provide health services in a remote way, and where countries are accelerating their growth to digitalization as a way to modernize the country and find new opportunities in their economy. And I would like to say that a big part of the digitalization effort is artificial intelligence. I think when you combine digitalization with big data and artificial intelligence, it really goes into a growth opportunity. So what I wanted to talk to you about today is primarily two things. I would like to give you a view of the opportunities for artificial intelligence and that as I see them today and in the future. And then I would like to talk to you about moonshots, which I think is the way of innovation in the 21st century, one that will bring about a lot of opportunities to create new ventures, new growth. And I will tell you and share some of my experiences at setting up and creating Alpha, the moonshot factory in Europe, and working with X, the other an original moonshot factory created by Google Alphabet to come up with total new big opportunities and unicorns. So, you know, a lot of people talk about artificial intelligence, but we don't sometimes when we think about artificial intelligence, we almost think about robots and movies that where robots are going to kill humans and sort of a very dystopian view. But we don't realize that artificial intelligence is already here with us right now, every day, from the moment that we get up until the moment that we go to bed. Artificial intelligence is helping us take us from point A to point B in a city by calculating the shortest route in a map. It's helping us find new friends on platforms like Facebook. It's suggesting new movies for us to watch and that are going to help us fulfill our entertainment in better ways. It's helping self-regulate the heating in our house. And all of that is happening through artificial intelligence already. It's not, you don't need to go 50 years away to understand that artificial intelligence is already helping us here in a very, very grounded way. So, and that is happening primarily because of multiple things. The first one is a tremendous access to data. I think data has increased very rapidly in the last years. If we were to put all the data that we have today in the world and store it into iPads, and we would make a tower of iPads with all the data that we have today, we would go from the Earth to the moon and back. So the amount of data is huge that we have. And then we are also gathering data not just from individuals, but also from things. The miniaturization of the chips is making it very possible to connect everything to the internet, whether it's a fridge, whether it is clothes, or whether it is a vehicle. The Internet of Things is making it very, very feasible to get a lot more data from a lot of things. And then another thing that is happening is that the cost of computing and the cost of bandwidth and connectivity is coming down very quickly. So you can see the cost of bandwidth has been coming down dramatically over the last years. The cost of computing has been coming down dramatically over the last years. The cost of storing information has been coming down dramatically over the last years. And the cost of launching a startup and experimenting is also becoming very, very cheap. What this means is that it's not only big companies and big corporations and only a few countries that can do this, but that a lot more people are able to play in the big data space because it's becoming a lot cheaper to do it. So if you look at, with all these things that are coming down to zero, the cost of connectivity, the cost of storage, the cost of computing, the value is moving into data. That's where the value is moving. And in the world where there is abundance of computing, we're moving into a data-driven world. The last thing that is happening is we have had a lot of progress in algorithms. Algorithms is what we use to get insights out of the data. So you can think of data like the ingredient, and you can think of algorithms like the recipe to cook that ingredient and produce a dish, something that you can eat and that will provide you with some useful information. The last thing I would say is that computing has increased to the point that we can do things that we couldn't do before, and it has happened primarily because of the video game industry. The video game industry uses particular computing processing units that used to be used for rendering high definition images into the computers, and now it's being used to accelerate AI. And all that has made total new industries appear in the last 10 years. Just to give you an example, let me show you one thing here. These are the top 15 worldwide companies in 2007. You can see that eight of them are energy, and only one of them is on the technology space. If you look at what happens 10 years later, and if you try to look at the top 15 companies in the world, only one of them is in the energy space, while there is about 7 of them that are in the technology space. And that shows you that truly data is the new oil. The oil companies are coming down and the data companies are going up. And if you look at those companies that have just emerged in the last 10, 15 years, five of those firms are Alphabet, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and Facebook. And there are 2 new Chinese companies that are joining the group in the last years as producing that big data opportunity. So with all of that, what's happening is that the venture capital investment has rapidly increased. It's gone up very, very fast. And we are seeing the number of publications and research that is happening in artificial intelligence is also increasing very, very fast. With China leading the number of publications, United States, Japan, United Kingdom, Germany, India, Spain, France, we're seeing a large number of activity in the artificial intelligence space. With most of the time now sitting in the United States, but about 25% of it now sitting in China, and the rest in the UK and continental Europe. I think artificial intelligence has gone through multiple waves of innovation. I think the first one has been helping the internet become more intelligent, so we could shop better, so we could find things better, so we could get different recommendation engines. The second wave appeared around year 2004, and it's the one that is helping organizations become more digital, and where it's helping big and small organizations leverage data and become smarter. The third wave is about digitizing the physical world, and especially having AI a presence in your home, where now you can talk to devices like Amazon Echo or like Google Voice. And the next wave is where artificial intelligence is automating things. And we can see it with, in particular, with self-driving vehicles, where we're going to have an artificial intelligence that is going to be very, very autonomous. And this is affecting all the industries. It's affecting the banking industry. For instance, now banks are able to give loan based on data from customers that never have a bank account. And they can do that because they can gather data from the activities that users have online, the activities that they have on their mobile phone, and they can produce a credit score and give the unbanked people and young people credit without having a prior financial history. But you can also see that artificial intelligence is helping other industries, like, for instance, the creative industry. This is an example of a work that I did with a chef, a very famous chef here in Spain, Ferran Adrià. He used to be #1 restaurant in the world for 5 years. And I worked with him creating a tool to create new dishes and to use artificial intelligence to understand what sort of ingredients you could combine to come up with new dishes. Here's an example of that tool. So that's one example in the creative industry. The other one is in sports. I think the sports industry is becoming more and more digitalized, and with more data and more algorithms and more information, you can take sports to the next level. This is an example that we did with Football Club Barcelona, gathering a lot of data from the different matches and trying to use artificial intelligence to help the team play better and come up with new strategies. And we develop all sorts of tools for them to understand what was working, what was not working, how to best train the teams, or how to decide which player should be playing where.
That wasn't the story in the first half. Messi.
We also did a lot of work. I think big data is very useful for governments, for town halls, and for to understand the heat map of a city. You know, where is it that interesting things are happening in the city? So you can color a city based on the activity, for instance, of the mobile phone, on how people are moving, and you can understand which areas are industrial, and you can color them in red, or you can understand which areas are more commercial or business, which areas are nightlife, which areas are residential. And this can help you make planning decisions, for instance, where to open the next big mall, or where to open the next big fitness center for the community, and help you with becoming a smart city. We did some of that here in Barcelona, taking some of the data from the mobile phones and understanding where is that the tourists were moving through the city, and where is it that they were going. So the town hall could personalize the experience for the tourists, and could guide them better to the different attractions in the city as the boats were arriving, and making sure also that some parts of the city that were very congested, and where the locals were complaining that there were a lot of tourists, that they could be decongested. So everybody, so you could come up with a better sustainable tourism model. AI can also be used for global good, and that's something that I will cover more later. But I think there has been a big effort by United Nations to come up with artificial intelligence that can be used for the global good, in particular for pandemias. Before COVID, we used to have other pandemias. Influenza was there, and the avian flu. And at the time, for instance, we worked with the Mexican authorities to devise new mechanisms to understand how is it that people were moving in the city, and understand how the flu was, the virus was moving, to stop the pandemia and take certain actions like the ones we're seeing now with COVID. So we could stop schools in the right places, and stop people from moving into certain areas, and not having to do a full lockdown of like it's been happening in many countries, because if you use big data and artificial intelligence, you can save lives. In fact, we show that in Mexico we could reduce the peak of the pandemic and delay the peak to avoid congesting the hospitals by a significant portion, and helping the local authorities to take control of the pandemic much better. I think artificial intelligence is also helping us with health and with our own health. It's becoming more and more important to have records of all your health. I think wearables and are gathering a lot of vital signals and are empowering us to be more in charge of our health. This is a Health Nucleus. Health Nucleus is a hospital that has been created in the United States based on big data. Their focus is artificial intelligence and big data. So you go there, I spent there a couple of days, and they do all sorts of tests. You come out of there with 150 gigabytes of data that then they see with that data whether they try to predict whether you're going to get sick, whether you're going to develop cancer, whether you're going to develop a stroke. And they combine things with other patients, and they build this big database of data where it's not doctors that are saving your life, it's the artificial intelligence engine that is saving your life. And it's very, very powerful. Let me show you how powerful this is, this artificial intelligence, in particular when you get data related to your health and related to your DNA. So you can predict things in the future and what can happen to you. For instance, one of the things that happen at this institute is that they can take a sample of your DNA based on your saliva, and without knowing who you are, they can actually try to predict how you look today or when you were 18 years old. So this is what I did with them. I gave them a sample of my saliva, and they didn't know, I mean, they didn't gather my photo, but the computer, based on my DNA, decided that it generated a virtual image of me, which you can see down here on the left, at the age of 18. The real me at the age of 18 is on the right. So you can see that the computer, just based on my DNA, it could actually know a lot of things about how is it that I could look, and therefore it could also predict a lot of things about me. Now, having said all of that, I think AI at this point, it's still early on. You know, the intelligence that we have in terms of artificial intelligence today is probably at the level of mouse. We still have a long way to go. And I think quantum computing and other advances that are happening in computer are going to make AI accelerate hugely over the next 3 decades. But at this point, we're still early on. But let me tell you, what is it that can happen in the future? What is it that the future of AI will look like? You know, I think one of the things that has happened in the last 10 years is that we've seen a new form of artificial intelligence appear, one that is called deep learning. It's one that helps you take artificial intelligence become very, very efficient. Over the last, AI is not new. It started in year 1956, but since year 1956 all the way to 2020, there haven't been many innovations. But the biggest innovation of all happened in year 2010. Over the last years, we are seeing the benefits of that technology innovation called deep learning. Deep learning basically finds patterns, finds structures. It thinks a bit like the brain of a human that tries to find patterns into. So rather than trying to identify a person by its face, it tries to understand that the person of this face has this shape, and maybe the nose is a bit longer, and maybe the ears are on the side and they're a bit bigger. So it tries to find patterns as opposed to try to identify a single face. It's the same way almost like a kid learns. So a kid you don't need to show all the horses in the world for a kid to recognize that when he sees a new horse, it's a horse, right? And the kid doesn't need to see all the bicycles in the world to see a new bicycle and understand that it's a bicycle. So that's exactly what happens with deep learning. You find patterns, and based on that, you understand that objects are a type of object without having to see all the objects in the world. But let me tell you what's happening with artificial intelligence today. You know, with the great progress of artificial intelligence now is starting to play much better than humans, and it's beating humans at many things. So this is a game that is well known to many, where this is a machine playing, and you see that it makes some mistakes at the beginning. It plays like a human would play. But after 10 minutes of playing, it actually starts working much better. What happens after 2 hours? Well, after 2 hours of playing and learning, it starts playing like an expert, like a human would do after, say, years of playing. But if you look at what happens after 4 hours of training, is where the magic happens. And the computer, the AI, finds a trick that no human has found before. And it basically uses the minimum number of steps to create a hole on the left and then just let the game complete by itself. You know, it's brilliant. It's something that it would take a human years and training, and that a computer will learn in just a couple of hours. I think the biggest example of all is what happened. You know, AI first beat the world champion at chess, and now it will beat the world champion at Go. Go is the hardest. There are more combinations at Go than atoms there are in the world. So it's a very hard game. It's a very difficult game. But what happened was that the AI won the world champion 4-1. And then what they did is they took the same AI that won the world champion 4-1 and had it compete against itself. So they had one AI competing with another AI and learning from each other. And after 40 days, the AI that had beaten the world champion 4-0 was able to win the AI that had been trained with all the previous data of people competing against each other, of humans, 100-0. So, you know, AI very quickly, without even not having any data, just playing with itself, was able to become a super expert at this game. Now, with all this data, we're able to bring back people from the past and recreate characters that we can put into movies as virtual and fake characters that can play into movies and have them be very, very real.
We'll find you explaining why to a far less patient audience. If saying it would only make it so. That won't be necessary. We need a statement, not a manifesto. You have made time and...
But we can also have very realistic TV
Hello,
anchors.
everyone. I'm an English artificial intelligence anchor. This is my very first day in Xinhua News Agency. My voice and appearance are modeled on Zhang Zhao, a real anchor with Xinhua. The development of the...
And AI, we always say, well, but it will not understand about humans. But it starts to understand about emotions. And this is myself with an AI machine that is trying to read my emotional state, whether I'm angry, whether I'm bored, whether I am happy, by looking at my facial expressions, whether I'm surprised. And AI is being taken to the next level as well, because we're getting to understand a bit more about the brain. Neuroscientists are working with computer scientists to understand how the brain works. And we're going to have artificial intelligence that works a lot more like humans. And so we're going to be able to create things like this. This is an artificial intelligence baby that looks very realistic, but that behind it, it's a brain made with artificial intelligence that learns as a baby would learn. It learns to get happy when it knows something new. It learns to be surprised when it gets scared. It learns to be empathize with another human. And I think we're getting close to an artificial intelligence. It learns how to get scared when there is something that is risky. So we're very close to getting an artificial intelligence that it starts to reason like a 1-year-old child and be able to make that type of progress. And artificial intelligence, we think that sometimes it needs a lot of data, sometimes it doesn't. It can just figure things out by itself if you tell it what is the end goal. For instance, in this example that I'm going to show you now, we created a robot where we told it that it needs to jump the obstacles and it needs to do it in the minimum amount of time. But we're not teaching this robot how to walk or how to run, but it will figure it out by itself. So you will see at the beginning it makes a lot of mistakes. It falls, and it doesn't look very good. But eventually it figures it out how to run, how to walk, how to jump, like a kid would do. So the AI teaches itself. Okay, so there are a huge amount of opportunities that we're already exploring with AI and big data, and there are more to come. But that doesn't come without threats and as well as the opportunities that I've just talked about. I think there are challenges ahead in terms of privacy, in terms of security, in terms of biases from that data, in terms of global dominance of a few companies, in terms of wealth inequality and job displacement. And this is something that a lot of people worry about and we will need to have very present. AI is not perfect and sometimes makes mistakes. For instance, this is Tiger Woods. And if you ask an artificial intelligence engine to tell you who this person is, with 90% probability will tell you that it's Tiger Woods. With 5%, it will tell you that it's a golf ball. And with 1%, it will tell you that it's Angelina Jolie. So, you know, sometimes most of the time gets it right, but sometimes it makes mistakes. And this is something we still need to improve. And we need to improve it because we need to get good data, not just a lot of data. We need to get good data. And data is almost more important than having a lot of good computers and a lot of good algorithms. Sometimes having a lot of data is important, but having a lot of context and small data is also important. And there is a big discussion about whether we should understand how the loss of life more for artificial intelligence to be able to make better predictions in cases where there is no data. But, you know, we're still far from artificial intelligence building what we call a human intelligence. Human intelligence, it requires to do a lot of things, and artificial intelligence at this point is only able to do what we call perception, meaning finding patterns. But it needs to still do common sense, which is something that humans do, planning, analogies, reasoning, language. So there's still a lot of things to do. Artificial intelligence is as good as the data that it learns from. If you put garbage in, it will take garbage out. There is a good example from Microsoft. It launched a Twitter AI chatbot that turned pro-Hitler and anti-feminist because it started talking to some, it started learning from some parts of Twitter that were extremist, and then itself became extremist and they had to shut it down. AI could also become biased in terms of genders. For instance, this is an example where if you type, this has been corrected by now, but it used to happen that if you type it into Google, the following, he is a babysitter and she is a doctor, and you translated it into Turkish, it would be translated into Turkish. And if you try to do the reverse translation, it would tell you that she is a babysitter and he is a doctor, because in Turkish there is no pronouns, And kind of the default is that women are supposed to be babysitters and men doctors, and creating this big bias that doesn't make sense, right? And this is created by artificial intelligence. In the United States, they did some experiments, and they realized that AI could be racist. It could imprison a black woman that had no a lower risk of becoming criminal versus a white male that was a serial rapist. Um, and, um, and there are, you know, all these biases is something that we have to work on very hard. It's not only computers that are biased, it's also our perception of things that is biased. And so it's very important for engineers to be very aware of this, that our own biases, we could put them into the computers and then make society very biased. For instance, this is an experiment where if you ask many people about this robot, this white robot, they will tell you that it's happy, that it's friendly, that it's cheerful, that it's approachable. But if you take the same robot and you make it do exactly the same thing, but it's a black robot, all of a sudden people will tell you that it feels aggressive, that they get scared. And, you know, there are a lot of the biases are in us. I think one of the challenges that we're seeing is that AI could create addictions, and we're seeing how AI could work in the same way that certain drugs, but improving your dopamine levels, and we're seeing that with kids. We have to be very careful with that. We're seeing suicides in children increasing with social media because of addiction, and that's something that we need to worry about. And then who owns the data? Who owns the data, and how do we make sure that everybody gets rewarded by data? You know, I think more and more we're spending time online. We're becoming, our souls, our beings is becoming a data. And there is a market around that. The more data we give to companies, the more money they make. And we are not the customer, we're the product. And that what could happen there is that a lot of companies, a lot of people could actually disconnect from the internet if they see that privacy is not being taken into account. I think big data weakens privacy, and that's a fact. But privacy also weakens big data, so we need to keep this balance right. There are solutions in terms of more transparency, or in terms of the regulation. I think in Europe, there has been a bigger regulation that is impacting the digital industries around the world. It's called GDPR, and it protects people's data and people's privacy. And we thought it was going to be stop innovation, but it's not happening. Actually, it's doing better for innovation. And there are solutions to protect privacy from a technology point of view. So, but this is something that is very important and that needs to be worked in the future. You know, some people say that you shouldn't care about privacy, but I disagree. I mean, we used to say you shouldn't care about people smoking in front of children, and we stopped that. Or people used to say you shouldn't wear a seatbelt in the car, but we stopped that. I think societies evolve, and we're gonna do better with privacy. And the last thing is, you know, AI sometimes is being said to be a black box, something that it's nobody understands. And AI is taking more and more life or death decisions. And that's something that if you ask a doctor whether he should trust the AI to operate or not a person, I think the doctor will want to know how is the AI making the decision, and he needs to understand what's the thought process. And so far, AI is kind of this big black box, and we need to understand a lot more about how it works. So there are some limitations for AI in terms of privacy, in terms of potential discrimination and bias, in terms of lack of transparency, in terms of lack of diversity, in terms of potential manipulation of behavior. And this is something that the whole scientist community is working on to make sure that we use AI for good and not for bad. And And in particular, this is something that I wanted to talk to you about now in the second part of the talk, where I can see a big opportunity for AI to drive sustainable impact for good in society and come up with moonshots. With moonshots, which is a new way of innovation in the 21st century. It's a way in which you use technology for good to help society solve some of the biggest challenges in the world. And at the same time, you create new businesses with it. I've created the Moonshot Factory in Europe. It's called Alpha for Telefonica, the largest telecommunication company here. And now working with Google X. And I wanted to share with you a bit of the insights of the learnings of how AI could be useful and how you can go about moonshots and how this is very important in the coming years, especially where disruption is real, where changes are happening, where it's no longer enough to just think that things are going to continue the same. You have to think about everything that will change, even if it is not for you to do a lot of innovation. It's for you to understand what's coming to you. You know, if you understand change, if you understand disruption, is your best defense line, and that you cannot be blind, because otherwise it's gonna steer you around, and disruption will happen whether you want it or not. So you either gonna be driving it, you are either gonna be aware of it, or you're gonna be suffering it. And I think we live in times of tremendous opportunities and challenges. You know, we have big global challenges like energy, environment, health, learning and education, governance, security, but we've never seen more opportunities for breakthrough technologies like artificial intelligence, robotics, augmented reality, nanotech, big data. So we are in a time where technology will provide us with the ability to solve some of the big challenges in the planet, challenges that have been haunting us for hundreds of years. And today we have the chance to give it a chance. I had this experience at Alpha and now with X. And just to give you some understanding of what is a potential moonshot, you know, for X, a potential moonshot is to come up with a self-driving car, a car that avoids all deaths in the roads. But this is another one that we work with them, which is to create networks in the sky, to basically put an antenna into a balloon, put it all the way into the clouds, and then be able to talk directly with your mobile phone, creating very cheap networks, as opposed to putting a lot of antennas in the ground. So what are moonshots? Well, moonshots are efforts that can impact the life of hundreds of millions of people for good, that can grow into billions of dollar businesses, and that use some radical solutions, some new technology. I say that moonshots have two parts. One is the moon, is the problem that you're trying to solve, and the other one is the shot, is the solution to that problem that you're trying to tackle. I always say fall in love with the moon, fall in love with the problem, not fall in love with the shot, with your idea. And sometimes it is very difficult for entrepreneurs, where they fall in love with the idea and they lose track of the problem that they're trying to solve. And sometimes they keep failing because they fall in love with their idea and not so much with the big problem that you're trying to solve. And we're talking about big size impact. We're talking about the first moonshot that we all know is going to the moon, the Apollo 11 mission, and bring back the astronauts alive. The other moonshot that we saw and we know is building the internet as a network that could withstand a nuclear war. And that's something that happened in the 60s and that we are all seeing the benefits today. Another moonshot was decoding the human genome. And we've seen how it has accelerated a lot of the health and new drugs and discovery. And moonshots used to be done at governments, but now we're seeing more and more corporations, Facebook, Amazon, Google, Telefonica, doing moonshots. They are becoming, because the costs are coming down, you're seeing that companies are also doing moonshots. And startups are starting to do more and more moonshots of this type. You know, for moonshots, it's very important to do things, to look at technology that is about to come out of the lab, out of the laboratory. If it is too early, it becomes science, it becomes research, and it should be done at universities. If it is too late, then it's something that it becomes a commodity almost. So you need to find technology at that sweet point where it's about to become out of the laboratory, and work very close with research labs and with your great scientists to create these moonshot opportunities. I will share with you some of the learnings that I had about learning how to do moonshots. I think the first one is difficult. You're going to be trying to solve the problem. It's like climbing to a mountain that nobody has done before. But I would say that moonshots, it's like earthquakes. You know, when they happen, they have a huge impact. It's like innovation. You know, when disruption happens, it has a huge impact. You don't know where it's going to happen, but you know that it will happen, and you need to be at the game. You need to be there, and you need to be aware of it. Otherwise, you're going to suffer it, and you're not going to be ready for it. So persistence is required. But I think we know more and more from business schools that if you diversify your innovation and you do 70% of your investment into things that your existing business, and 20% of your investment into new businesses, and 10% of your investment into disruptive opportunities, the future will be the opposite. So the 10% of the revenues will come out of your existing business, 20% of your revenues will come out of your new businesses, and 70% of the revenues will come out of the disruptive opportunities. So but it requires persistence. It requires patience. I think it requires a separate organization creating these moonshots, come up, get together with other corporations and create a separate unit that can think differently to go after these moonshot opportunities. I think if you try to do them from within your organization, you're probably going to fail. And it requires support from the top. It requires a chairman or board level support because this goes aligned with the vision of the company and the mission. So you require some long-term support and stability. And moonshots are very different from startups. I think you're trying to accomplish a big mission. Your outcome will be 5 years out as opposed to a few years out. You need to have sophisticated technology, and your ambition is very big. You're really trying to go for billions of dollars of ambition as opposed to hundreds of millions of dollars. Moonshots, they have a social impact, and they need to have a purpose, and the purpose for doing good for the planet. And I have to say that purpose and profit are not at odds, are not something that you have to choose one or the other. I think you can do both. And here is some data that shows that tells you that the growth stocks in the coming years are in red and in green. And these relate to things like food, inequality, education, longevity, obesity. And this relates to things related to people and the planet. So that's where the next growth will happen. So doing well for people and the planet, it will do good for business as well. You need to create organizations with new values that care about curiosity, that are honest, that care about trust, that help their engineers and scientists and designers and artists to think big and dream big. And you have to invest a lot in humans that can dare to think a culture that ignites 10x thinking and not 10% thinking. With small teams that are high performing, that you need to bring the best and make sure that you work with the best, with diverse backgrounds, with not only engineers, but artists, but philosophers and designers and coming from different disciplines, coming together to go after these moonshots, and really caring for them as humans, as individuals. That's super important. I think caring for your inner soul, for your inner journey, is super important for success. It's not just about money. It's not only about technology. It's about the inner journey. I think there are methodologies to come up with moonshots. It's not something that a lot of organizations know, but I think we are perfecting it. I think there is the experience that we had at Alpha, the one that X is having, and organizations like the Future IO Institute in Europe are understanding better what sort of methodologies you can use to come up with moonshots. There are methodologies that combine future thinking with sci-fi writing, with things that are coming from the movie making world. It's something that you have to experience. There are programs that you can go, say, for a month to have your organization develop moonshot thinking and come up with moonshot ideas. And you will see it's a beautiful journey where you're gonna have you're gonna be able to rewrite your vision and your mission and align your organization into what is the future holds, and look at things from these multiple lenses, from technology, from business impact, from grand challenges and future, and start doing things, because that's very important for Moonshot. It's not only about thinking, it's about doing. It's about becoming very impatient. It's about running things with various intermediate milestones, with building quick prototypes that can be put in front of people really quickly, and being able to go from a lot of ideas into one moonshot and putting into the hands of people very quickly. I wanted to talk about this particular one because it has graduated today as the moonshot from Telefonica in mental health, and this is creating a moonshot in mental health. We started this about 6 years ago. Today, mental health is a pandemic. It's something that is affecting the life of many people, and we needed to come up with a good person to run this moonshot. And so we brought a psychiatrist that was an entrepreneur as well. So you have to think about talent in a different way. A telecommunication company doesn't have a psychiatrist that can run a mental health project by itself. So it's very important that you create the space where you can bring that new talent. And don't work alone. Work with communities, work with experts. But this is the myself, my team, working with the Google X team, and now what I'm part of. But go to places where co-create with the communities. This is the team going and working with people in rural Peru to design an energy solution that could help them and their kids extend a few more hours of light so they could study. And going to new communities, going to new places. This is our Chief Innovation Officer going into California, Burning Man, where society is being rethought every year, and to try to get new ideas. You will have to find out new metrics, the metrics that will serve you regularly in your business, your KPIs, or in a startup, like customer acquisition growth, cost, revenue growth, churn, will not serve you for moonshot at the beginning. As I said, there is a process that you can go through. There are 8 steps to find moonshots, and it's a beautiful journey for your organization to take. But you will need to come up with your own metrics because the typical metrics will not work. But the fact that you're going after moonshot doesn't mean that you cannot measure things, and doesn't mean that you cannot go after things that are concrete and measurable. And it's a journey from belief into impact that can give you a lot of success and a lot of joy. Killing ideas is super important. But I think a lot of people talk about failure like it's something that you need to do. No, I don't want my teams to fail, but I want them to learn from them. I don't want them to be working on things that are going nowhere. So it's very important to develop the ability to kill things when you understand that they're not serving the mission and learning something. So failure becomes a superpower. Failure becomes something that you celebrate, because you celebrate that all of a sudden you kill loads of ideas that were going nowhere, so you can focus on the ones that are going to make it happen. And as I said, take care of people. I think to me the most important thing is when I see the eyes of individuals shining. These are my CTO and Chief Innovation Officer, and it's super important that there is a good energy in the organization to make it happen. So I wanted to finish giving you a couple of examples of moonshots. I think I already talked about the health moonshot. 70% of the disease of people die today of chronic disease. They don't die out of infectious disease. And these chronic diseases are created by bad behaviors, by mental health problems, by smoking, poor diet, anxiety, poor sleep, lack of exercise. This is creating a 5 trillion cost into society. So we came up with a moonshot where we started thinking that we could create digital medicine, meaning you could, rather than going and seeing a therapist and a psychiatrist, you could see a psychiatrist and a therapist in your mobile phone. And we wanted to make sure that this was having the same efficacy as going and seeing a doctor. And so we went through clinical trials, and we proved that for certain conditions, like certain addictions, like for instance, alcoholism or anxiety or depression, we could create digital medicines that have the same efficacy as the one, as if you were to see a doctor. And sometimes they work even better, because a lot of people, because they could be personalized, and because there is less stigma to using it. The other one is education. Education as a moonshot. But I would like to, the way we thought about this problem is that you don't need more education, because it's very hard to understand what to get educated about with so many things changing. It's very hard to tell our kids what is it that they need to be educated on. What we need to do instead is helping them learn, because by helping them learn, they're going to be able to learn what they need at any point in time. And so our moonshot there is an AI tutor, to build an artificial intelligence tutor rooted in cognitive and neuroscience to tell hundreds of millions of people what they need to learn at any point in time. So it can unlock the human potential of an increasingly uncertain future, focusing on the future and learning by having an AI companion, a coach that helps you learn what you need to learn at any point in time in your life. And finally, energy. Energy is such an important, such a super important topic in our society. How do you power the next billion people? Energy is the number one grand global challenge. Energy consumption is directly linked to the human development level of a country. If you solve for energy, you solve for everything else, for water, for food, for environment, for poverty, education, democracy, population. There is a magic threshold that if you move a country or a society beyond the 200 kilowatt per hour per household per year, magic things start happening. You improve the local economy by more than 50 euros per household. You improve health, you improve education, you empower women to be more productive and to more choices. So we thought about this moonshot. Could we provide clean and affordable power for the next billion by totally rethinking the way we distribute and manage energy? Because there are a number of things that are happening around the energy space that are very interesting. The number of solar panels, the prices is coming down dramatically. If you look at the, not only, which is helping us rethink generation, but at the same time, storage. Storage is super important to keep the energy that you generate locally, and the price of storage is coming down. But nobody is thinking about how to rethink distribution of energy, which today is very centralized. So we came up with this moonshot to do a totally distributed energy system where the neighbors and communities would help each other, moving energy from one place to another, almost like you move information one place to another, and use AI as the engine to make those decisions to move to design a total new energy infrastructure. And I wanted to finish there. I think there is a big opportunity to solve major grand challenges. We know how to do it today. It's not there are methodologies, there are new innovative methodologies to do that. I would love to help you in your journey for your moonshots. And I think AI, in particular AI that is ethical, that cares about trust, transparency, and privacy, will be the basic engine of a lot of that growth. And with that said, I wanted to thank you for your attention, and look forward to continuing the journey with you.
Thank you. It's been a wonderful presentation and very interesting projects. That I'm sure it will be inspiration for a lot of us. This session going to be question and answer. So if you have any questions, anything, please chat online, and then the team will submit to us. First of all, we have a question that knowing that AI incidents in wrong learning, you mentioned about that they love Hitler and other stuff because of getting into wrong, probably chat group, whatever. Knowing that AI incidents in wrong learning and bias, how should we go about developing AI to prevent the undesirable results from happening?
Right. I think we're at a time where technology is happening very fast, much faster than what society many times is able to adopt. And technology will make mistakes. We just need to make sure that those mistakes are not critical for humans. So I think there are multiple ways in which we can reduce the biases for AI. The first one is train our engineers. I think it's educate our engineers, not only in technology, but in ethics, in biases, understanding that we as humans, we have biases, and understanding that as you code and as you program, you make biases into those programs. So I think it's training our engineers is super important, teaching them about ethics, teaching them about privacy, super important. The second one is get good data, because the algorithms are going to be biased based on the data that you have. I think there was a very good example recently where Pokemon Go, the game from Nintendo, was released in the United States, and Pokemons were only appearing in white neighborhoods and not in black neighborhoods. Oh. The problem was that the map they were using was a map that was primarily being generated by driving around white neighborhoods. And therefore, other communities could not get access to the game. So understand your data and make sure that you have the best data possible that doesn't have biases. And then two more. Another one is transparency. I think improve your transparency. Understand, make public your data. Make public your algorithms so you can see the biases and everybody can help, the community can help. And last but not least, create diversity of thinking. Bring different points of views into technology. As I was saying before, philosophers, ethics, sociologists. I think as technology is getting embedded more and more into society, we need to bring all the points of views to make sure that we make the least number of mistakes possible.
Yeah, thank you. So basically, we should teach good values to the kids, and having good data input, and also have be open for in public for the algorithm so everyone can help, and having diversity of thinking to make this work better, right? Another question is, when do you think the energy moonshot will start to materialize, and what might be the key success factors?
So the energy moonshot is already working in Bangladesh and in Africa, and there are a number of pilots happening. Google X has a similar effort already working. So if anybody's interested, I can point them into the right direction. I think the main metrics for success is making sure that you reduce the cost of energy and you improve the availability of energy. So and that you can show that AI can play a big role at building a totally distributed energy grid.
Okay, thank you. And another question is, at first we think that AI still can't do the emotional thing that much, so you still need people. But when they see you show the educational program, that basically AI will be the coach for the kids to learn, right? Does it involve in the emotional part, inspiration, and other stuff that it can be done?
No, in this case, the AI will not be the teacher, will be the tutor, meaning it will recommend you what to learn, and it will tell you what you need to learn, and it maybe will help you during the learning. But I think replacing a human engagement, that is still very difficult, although we're going to see more and more of that. We're going to see more and more of that. But I think there is a prior step where AI understands what sort of skills you need to know now. Maybe I need to know more of a collaboration skills, or I need to develop empathy skills, or I need to develop critical thinking skills, because maybe that's what so the AI tutor will be able to understand what are my needs at this point in time and help me learn them. And then maybe it's going to suggest for me to do some games or some training that I will develop those skills. I think to me, it's not about AI versus HI, so artificial intelligence versus human intelligence. It's the sum of both that will be able to make the difference. And I think it's so important that we also develop our own human intelligence. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. And another question would be, any advice for those with visions who would like to reverse engineer corporate investment at the boardroom level, from the core to the disruptive investment?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yes.
I mean, for me, it took me about 2 years to convince the board to do disruptive innovation. One thing that I did, and it may help, I set up a disruptive innovation council. So I set up an innovation council that was created out of disruptive innovation experts around the world, from different organizations. And we were meeting every 4 to 6 months, and we were constantly coming up with reports and talking to bringing board level executives into the council, into the innovation council, so they could see the opportunity, so they could see that there was a big value in taking some more risks. I think it requires a lot of trust. It requires somebody that can speak their language, that can show them the opportunities out there through vision. I think it has to be at the board level or the chairman level. I think if it happens at any CXO, chief marketing officer, CFO, CTO, it will not happen. You need to have support from the top. And I think it's a conversation. I can see more appetite now because disruption is real. But I think you have to show them a way that is an incremental journey, that you can start testing things out. Maybe you have to do first an ideation exercise with the board, So they start thinking moonshots, and then maybe some ideas will come out of there. Maybe you pick one, and then you go for a pilot of 6 months, and you see progress. So I think you need to define a journey. I don't think it happens overnight that that you're going to start doing it.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting. Are there any funds like this already exist and established in Europe, like disruptive investment funds?
We're seeing more and more. I think Daniel Ek, the CEO of Spotify, he came up last month saying that he was going to put $1 billion fund on the disruptive innovation. And several governments came and they said that they wanted to do the same. They wanted to add into that fund. The European Union has put together a $100 billion fund for moonshots, for missions. Japan has put another 100 billion fund for moonshots as well. So we're seeing governments, we're seeing venture capitalists and individuals doing more and more of that. And I'm hopeful because I see the future is there. The future is on doing sustainable social innovation with deep technology that can move the needle for society and for organizations.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we have we wish we have more time, but I think the time is running out, and I would like to convey my sincere appreciation to Mr. Pablo for very good, very nice, in-depth sharing experience and your innovation, yeah, in AI. And thank you very much on behalf of TMA. And we hope that we will have a chance to be able to learn from you and get your idea and get things done, in the future. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Thank you very
Best
much.
of luck.
Yes, thank you.
TMA would like to thank all of you for joining us today. We also look forward to seeing you again at our upcoming TMA Top Talk on December 15th, 2020 by Mr. Johan Osterlund, founder and CEO of Biohugs International, which will focus on digital identity, data privacy, and cybersecurity. Please scan the QR code on the screen for registration or contact TMA for more details. We have now come to the end of TMA Top Talk, Artificial Intelligence, the Transformer. I would like to express our appreciation to our strategic partner, Thailand Convention and Exhibition Bureau, and our generous sponsors, Bangkok Bank Public Company Limited, Beta Grow Public Company Limited, Thai Beverage Public Company Limited, and Thai Oil Public Company Limited that have been such a great support. And before we go, I would like to seek your cooperation in completing the evaluation form by scanning the QR code on the screen. Your feedback is essential to us as we can continue to improve our programs and services to you. Once again, thank you very much and have a good evening. สวัสดีค่ะ